getting Elevate to where we are today and with the speakers that are here.
Former First Lady of the United States.
Commander Chris Hadfield.
ACON.
Mr. Bill Morneau.
Join us in uniting the world's innovators to solve society's greatest challenges.
Bad times usually create great companies.
You can either help this issue around income inequality, or you can bulletproof your Tesla.
Welcome everyone to episode 8 of Elevate Live. My name is Razor Suleiman and I am your host today. We have an incredible show for you this afternoon. We've got 3 of the most prominent venture capitalists in North America. What I love about them is that they're all very founder friendly. We did that episode a couple of weeks ago of alternative sources of raising capital for your startups. All were non-dilutive, no board seats, founder friendly. Well, now we're going to talk about the equity side of the equation, traditional venture capital at different stages, 3 amazing VCs looking at investing in your company. We're going to talk about 3 things today with them. We're going to talk about how COVID has impacted the funding landscape. We're going to chat with them about the things that they tell their founders, their portfolio companies behind closed doors. We're going to ask those questions openly and honestly today to make sure that our founders have the same access to information as great VCs provide. And third, we're going to talk about the next big idea. There's never been a better time to start a company. We're going to do a rapid fire with our 3 VCs around what they are investing in. Once we're done that, we're going to go to an AMA, Ask Them Anything. Our VCs will be taking live questions from the thousands of founders we have on our show today. Send them what's on your mind. We're going to go and ask them for their most thoughtful answers. Next week, we have Canadian legend Arlene Dickinson. She was a former dragon on CBC's hit shows Dragon's Den. She's an incredible entrepreneur, investor, and she's going to talk about reinvention. I know a lot of us are sort of thinking about what does life look like after COVID? What does it look like for my career, my company? Well, Arlene has been putting a lot of thought in that, and she's going to tell you her thoughts on reinvention. Today, we've got 3 incredible venture capitalists, as I said, on the show today. We've got Byron Deeter. He is a partner at Bessemer Venture Partners. Welcome to the show, Byron. We've got Miura-Ko. She's the co-founding partner at Floodgate. And we've got Salim Teja, from a partner at Radical Ventures and our very own co-founder of Elevate on the show with us today. Welcome all of you. We're actually going to start with Byron first. Byron from Bessemer Venture Partners, you guys are the creators, in my opinion, of investing in SaaS and cloud computing. I know at my old company, Achievers, the Bessemer top 10 laws of SaaS were our Bible. We just pretty much said, let's do this better than Bessemer thought it was possible. For me personally, Byron and Bessemer were the VCs that got away. I foolishly took money from Sequoia Capital, the least founder-friendly firm on the planet. And next time with my next startup, Byron, you're going to be, all 3 of you are going to be my first call. Byron, thank you again for joining us in the call today. I'm not done.
Wonderful to be here.
Why, Byron? I'm not done yet, Byron. I'm not done. $14 billion companies, 14. 8 of them have now gotten public. Has been an incredible VC, friend to the founder, been on Midas's lists for a couple of years. So welcome to the show, Byron.
Much appreciated. Great to be here with your audience today.
Awesome, Byron. Let's talk about managing a crisis. You've seen the rise and the fall in the dot-com era. You saw the Great Recession and how that changed the startup landscape. Talk to me about COVID and how this crisis either mirrors some of the elements of the past or how it's completely different.
Yes. Well, let me say first, personally, it's very different to not be a founder CEO this time. Back in 2000, I was in the founder and CEO chair, and I have immense empathy for all of you out there who are dealing with this firsthand. It's very impactful when every employee you've hired, every customer you've been involved with landing, and there's no way to minimize that, particularly for companies that may be facing tough decisions around possible layoffs, around furloughs, around just not being able to keep the business at the scale that you had envisioned at that point in time. And so I guess the other major difference is that it's not our fault this time. If you look back at 2000, which was tech-based, or 2008, which was fintech sector-based, there were certainly a lot of blame, and there was blame and culpability to go around in terms of the irrational exuberance that rolled through those sectors. This time, it's very finite and discrete. We know that there will be an end to this. The speed at the entry has been brutal. It's likely that the next many months will be very tough as we're trying to work our way through this. But the fundamentals globally are still strong. It's this damn vaccine and that we're all waiting on. And so when a treatment and or a vaccine rolls through that meaningfully changes outcomes, there will be a strong recovery. And I absolutely believe that the sector, that tech in general, will rebound aggressively when those things reveal themselves.
Well, you talked about the recovery in tech being recovering. When you look at the S&P 500, you're kind of seeing 490 companies go down, and 5 or 6 companies further differentiate. Do you think that that's going to be the way of the future, that companies born today will continue to show their way up to the top of the S&P?
Well, I can make it even more significant for you, which is that the Bessemer NASDAQ Emerging Cloud Index, which is now mirrored by the Wisdom Tree Cloud Computing Index, is the top performing ETF of the year to date, literally out of the 81 tech, software, hardware, services ETFs globally. It's performing the best, which is to say that cloud computing is enabling the shelter in place and actually, in many cases, has a bit of a tailwind. And so the top line for a specific sector of tech actually looks very positive. Now, as you pull out and look at a lot of related tech sectors, obviously the net impact has been negative. And then when you pull out one level again, the economic hit that's just starting to roll through has been very negative. And so there's a clear disconnect where people are at this point in specific sectors in the S&P, the Dow, and in cloud, they're forward pricing through this crisis. When you look to the Russell or you look to SMB businesses, though, the impact has been much more severe. And certainly when you look at unemployment and a lot of the macro stats, the economy right now has a lot of real challenges. And so this is a time where different people are experiencing very different things. And certainly the impact for the broader base hasn't fully rolled through yet.
Yeah, I know. Listen, it's definitely a good time to be a cloud and a SaaS entrepreneur. Those reoccurring subscription revenues, is definitely a great business to be in. Okay, next up, we've got Miura-Ko. She is the co-founding partner at Floodgate, one of Silicon Valley's most prominent VCs. Anne is a veteran. She's a pioneer investor. She has been on the Midas list several times, has been recognized as one of the most powerful women in the startup landscape. The New York Times named her the 20 most prominent venture capitalists globally. She is a proud investor in TaskRabbit, as well as sits on the board of Lyft. Welcome to the show, Anne. So great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And listen, you've been in the startup scene for a number of years. You've seen the ups and downs. Tell me why now is the best time ever to start a company.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got started in venture twice, and in between I was in a PhD program. The first time through actually was 2001. And I got started with a very interesting time because my second day of work was 9/11. And then the second time I re-entered into the venture landscape, I was also facing a downturn. It was in 2008. And both times is interesting. The first time we actually decided to reduce the fund size pretty dramatically. I was working for Charles River Ventures. They went from a $1.2 billion fund to a $450 million fund. It sort of tells the story of what kind of impact it had in venture. When I came in the second time, this is when I was founding my own firm. The interesting piece of that was, as a founder, a lot of people assumed that the reason I was founding my own venture firm was because I couldn't find a job. And it was funny because so many people offered to help me find a job. And I think this speaks to what it's like to be a founder when it's not cool to be a founder. You do it for the love or for a critical insight that you have, not for the merit badges. A lot of people right now will be fleeing into grad school, right? They'll go to business school to survive the next 3 years, or they'll go work at a larger company because it's just a little bit more safe. And so if you feel the pull to found something in this moment, it means that you're doing it for the love or for a fundamental belief that something has to be born. And I think that's the best reason to start a startup.
Yeah, no, listen, I agree. I think being a founder is the toughest job on the planet. Maybe frontline workers right now, clearly what they're dealing with, but a founder is definitely someone who is following that passion, he or she. And especially if you, I think, are starting a company in this era, there clearly is a problem in the world that you think you've got the right solution and you want to be a part of that. Because you're right, Anne, there's so many safer choices for people, but we want people to follow their desire to start companies. And so many great companies came out of difficult eras. Okay, next up we've got Salim Teja. Salim is a partner at Radical Ventures. It's a debut venture fund right here from Canada. Get this, first fund out of the gate for him and his co-founders. They raised $500 million on a debut fund. Absolutely incredible. Previous, Salim was the president of Marge Discovery District and a co-founder of Elevate. He's an entrepreneur, investor, community builder. Salim, welcome to the show.
Hey, Razor. Thanks very much for having me.
So you've been on both sides of the table. You've founded things. You've been an investor. You've gone and go back and forth. Share some of the perspective that you're having, the conversations that you're having with founders, particularly first-time founders that are navigating this unprecedented time. What are you telling them?
I think a few things. Number one is, I think in times like this, we tend to underestimate how fast things may recover. And so we're having lots of conversations with our founders about, let's try and act decisively, let's try and act quickly, and let's all appreciate that the next 12 months may be a lot of chaos and a lot of instability in the market. And so let's face those realities head on. So that's sort of number one, an important conversation to have. Number two, I think whenever you're in times of instability like this, communication is key. So ensuring that founders are effectively communicating with their teams and their organizations, that they're effectively communicating with their leadership teams, and effectively communicating with their board, so that we can all understand, what are we learning about the market? What's working? What's not working? Where perhaps do we need to pivot, reinvent ourselves, and where can we perhaps continue to invest? And so I think that becomes, really, really important. And then finally, I think, in times like this, I really do believe that, when startups are out there selling to customers, it really becomes a lot about finding the must-have solution rather than the nice-to-have solution. Everything is now going to focus on selling around mission-critical needs, and how do we make sure that we are positioning our company to be one of those essential solution providers in this new type of market reality, and what are we learning about the market day after day, week after week, month after month to help us understand how to best position our company.
Got it. Mission critical versus the nice to haves. Almost again, that painkiller versus vitamin is especially true in these difficult times. So let's talk about the funding landscape. I'm going to welcome all of our VCs back on to talk about the funding landscape and what you're seeing. Look, clearly COVID is a paradigm shift. We're seeing an acceleration both in social and economic change that we've never seen before. I'm going on the record and saying I predict that COVID will be more disruptive than the internet, personal computers, and mobile technology combined when you see how quickly the world changes post-COVID. Byron, let's start with you. What are you seeing in terms of the investing landscape? Are you guys doubling down? Are you sort of holding your chips? How is Bessemer thinking about this right now? Okay, Ann, we're going to go to you. Let's talk about what you're telling founders, the startups that you're investing in. We know that that VCs obviously have great sort of perspectives and pattern recognition. They get to see a lot of companies, a lot of metrics. What are you telling your founders behind closed doors that they really should be focusing on?
Yeah, there's a few things. So number one is thinking through your customers. So when you're very early in building your startup, one of the things that you're focused on is trying to figure out who your best customers are. And your best customers are ones who have long lifetime value. They're easy to find. They absolutely need your product. And they're healthy companies, right? And so that's a very important piece of being a long lifetime value customer. The issue right now is your customers who were great customers early on, maybe in January, maybe not great customers in July. And so that reflects not only in who are you selling to, and are those customers really the best customers to go after now? It also speaks to product market fit. So you might have had incredible product market fit in January, but by July, it doesn't work out. The same goes for what we're calling COVID market fit. You might have great product market fit today, but 6 months from now, the need could have passed. And so that assessment is absolutely critical. And it's sort of live and real time. It's not something that you can assess once and call it quits. It's something that we're working through our portfolio companies on a constant basis. We're also thinking about, just from a fundraising status, how much capital do you need in order to get through uncertainty? Now, I think most VCs now are settling somewhere between 2 and 3 years of cash. And so we're telling a lot of our founders, hey, in order to get to a state where I would say you are anti-fragile, so you are no longer dependent on investors to pull you through, that means you have to have 2+ years of cash. True anti-fragility means you are actually cash flow positive.
Got it. Listen, I love companies that are cash flow positive, independent, not relying on having to raise money. Byron, if you are not so fortunate to be in that position and founders are coming, whether it's an inside round or they're trying to raise capital, what are you seeing to valuations? Are you guys paying a premium? Are they tanking? Where are we seeing valuations today?
Yes, so good to be back, and sorry for the technical glitches there. There's a highly dynamic time now for valuations, given this extreme difference between the SMB company that was servicing hospitality or travel and the cloud company that is serving collaboration and may actually be seeing a tailwind from these things. And so I would say, from a founder's perspective, there's still a window to get these premium public market comps as your reference point and still complete a pretty compelling financing, particularly given the fact that we're coming off of all-time highs in most markets, and therefore you're being compared against some very favorable numbers. I would also say that from the investing side, people are still able to think long-term and are still making investments. It would be crazy to say it's business as usual, but I do think that most top firms are still open for business.
Got it. And venture is one of those, kind of say, traditional industries where you kind of, you get on a plane, you do the Sandhill Road thing, you do your PowerPoint. Have you guys gone completely virtual? Like, are you making investment decisions without ever meeting the founders now face to face?
So we are, and we're working through that. I mean, I think Salim made some very good points about communication for a founder to the team. I think the same applies for investors and the founders. And to Anne's point around the motivation and incentives for why people are doing this, the passion, the energy, the connectivity, those are the fun parts about working with founding teams and the executives. And that's harder virtually. There's no two ways about it. We're fumbling through it, as I think most are, certainly very comfortable in a video world, but I'm still partial to trying to do a virtual walk or grab a drink outside with someone to talk through things. And we'll try to do that for this summer on net new investments that are local. And we'll make do with video on a lot of calls for founders that are remote. Certainly, it's premature to expect them to travel out, and I'm for anything beyond a car drive away. I'm unlikely to be flying out in the next few weeks, but we all hope that'll change in the coming months.
Got it. Let's bring it a little closer to home. Salim, Toronto's been known as a global leader in artificial intelligence. That was really the investment thesis of Radical Ventures. How are you seeing the local Toronto ecosystem changing in terms of investments?
So yeah, Razor, as you mentioned, our fund is really focused on breakthroughs in AI. And so the technologies that we typically focus on are machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, and robotics, and leveraging those technologies to industries such as healthcare, financial services, and infrastructure, which we describe as smart city, smart mobility. Since we've launched, it's been a year now, we've made 10 investments. 7 of the 10 investments that we've made are Canadian companies, and 6 of the 7 investments that we've made are investments that are based in Toronto. So we really do believe that Toronto is really punching above its weight in the area of AI and specifically in machine learning. This is a very interesting time right now where we're seeing very creative applications of machine learning being accelerated into markets like healthcare, whether that's AI for drug discovery or helping to facilitate vaccine development, AI focused on medical imaging. And so, in this very turbulent environment, I think people are looking and willing to look at these technologies more creatively. And it allows us to get a sense of how these technologies will fit into these industry structures and what kind of value that they can have. So, I think this turbulent period has been a very interesting learning experience for us. And I think one of the things that Anne mentioned is very true for us, which is as we're looking at these opportunities, really trying to differentiate what's a COVID market fit, where we're seeing really strong demand right now versus more sustainable product market fit, I think is a discussion that all investors are trying to understand, as certain industry sectors are being accelerated and other industry sectors are being crippled. But for us in Canada, I think that in the area of machine learning, there is no doubt that we are recognized as having some of the best world-class talent in the world. That includes not only homegrown talent that we've developed at our universities and through institutes like the Vector Institute for Artificial Intelligence and the Mila in Montreal, but also the incredible talent that's coming into Canada from other countries that perhaps may have chosen the UK or US in the past, but because of the immigration challenges, I've really decided to settle in Canada. That has been a big boost to our machine learning talent, and we continue to be really, really bullish on the companies that we think will be born, in this environment.
Yeah, no, I think there's a real opportunity for Canada, who has been very welcoming and open. We've got our 30-day fast-track visa program. We are open for the best, the brightest people looking to start companies, ML experts, data scientists. Canada's open. Come, we'll get you started, set up, get you some Tim Hortons, and help you start your companies. And I want to go to you. You brought this, you introduced this incredible new concept to the world around COVID market fit. So let me just backtrack here. Let's think about it in a metrics world for 2020, right? I thought I had product market fit in January. I've been following the Bessemer top 10 laws of SaaS. I'm crushing it on every metric. And then bam, the world changes. And now I got to look at metrics through a COVID market fit, which is going to be relevant for 6 months. And then January 2021, like who knows? How do you talk to founders around what metrics matter?
Yeah, so as a seed stage investor, we're investing pre-product market fit in general anyway, and so we are hardly ever looking at growth metrics in the same way a Series A, Series B investor would. And so most of the time, the focus is always on engagement and how much joy you're bringing to your customer. And so some of that is literally through interviews with customers and hearing what they are saying about the product, both from a buyer's perspective, but also from a user's perspective. That actually doesn't change very much. And, you know, in our board meetings, those are still things that we're reviewing. A lot of times in a COVID market situation, you're seeing people come through once, twice, use it, and then kind of leave. And so you know that the growth is coming from just sort of an immediate need, not necessarily a sustainable need. And so what's more important for me is actually being able to have that conversation of what does actually product market fit look like? And for every company, I find that the metrics there actually look very, very different. And so once you get to a growth stage, you start to have much more predictable numbers. But around that product market fit search, the timing can actually go for a long period of time. And so it's not about how often you double your numbers, but rather, you know, what are customers saying? Why are they using your product? Who are these customers? How easy are they to find? Those are the types of questions that we're constantly discussing in our boardrooms.
Yeah, I love that concept of bringing joy to your customers, right? Especially in a time right now where, you know, you're just tired of watching the news. If you are so lucky to build a product that customers love to use, not need to use, but love to use, I think that's a real opportunity. And the new bar, right? There's so many new technologies out there. Byron, I'm going to go to you on the what you're telling founders. I'm going to ask you a question, but I want you to tell me not the standard things you tell founders, you know, around, hey, preserve your cash and love your customers and you know, over communicate. Go back to your days as a founder. What was the best advice you got when you were a founder that's really stayed with you over your career that you think is super relevant now in the COVID era? Okay.
Well, the first step is probably take the money. If you're building a business and are thinking long term and need outside capital to do it, then you're subject to the market dynamics. And so certainly would encourage folks to say, you know, whatever is fair value at that point in time, to grab the money and go. I still think valuations are extremely strong in the markets, but even in choppy times, as we saw some of the pullback in March and people were overthinking it, at the end of the day, build a business and go. And whether it was my business in 2000, where we, you know, the valuations fluctuated massively, but we're able to build it in a great environment and still have a great outcome, or as an investor in 2008, looking at that pullback. You know, for us, it was Twilio, Shopify, Pinterest. Some of our best investments were seed and Series A investments coming out of the teeth of that recession. It is a great time to be a founder from the standpoint of hiring, recruiting, thinking long term. And so absolutely counsel people to not get overly focused on the short-term fluctuations and to think about it as if it's your capital. So certainly you've got to be wildly efficient at it, but get on with the business building. And as Ann said up front, if the passion is pure, you'll be able to through force of will and conviction of vision, attract the team you need to both investors and co-founders and operators to go out and conquer the world.
Right. Salim, you've been very passionate about people and founding teams. You have yourself have been a part of some really great founding teams. The team that founded Elevate, when you went on and created Radical Ventures with Jordan and Tomi, you couldn't have picked two better co-founders around AI or them picking you. Talk to me about, as entrepreneurs or founders are thinking about forming teams, not going to business school, what's your advice to founding teams as they're looking to start a company in this era?
I mean, I think number one, look for an opportunity where you have an alignment of passion and where you really do believe that you can make a difference through the innovation that you've identified. Building a company, can be a 6, 8, 10-year process. And so it's not a short-term decision you're making a long-term decision. And so I think that passion has to be, very authentic and very aligned. And number two, I'd say pick people that you want to be in the trenches with. It's easy to be great colleagues when times are good, but I think people's true stripes really show when times are bad. And we really do believe that, leadership really, really matters when we're in unstable times like these. So, identify what your strengths are, identify who you work well with, make sure that you're aligned from a value standpoint. And I'd say, make sure that you're ready for, the battle that you're going to go through. And then third is, I think, pick people who have complementary skills to you, so that you can, focus on different parts of the business, but also be able to bring in others around you that can help raise the bar from a talent perspective, because ultimately any successful venture is really going to be driven by, the incredible talent that you're able to, develop and attract. And so startups are all about people, and ultimately that's what you got to focus on.
Yeah, I think people that you want to spend your time with during the low times, because we don't know how long this is going to last. Is this months or is this years? So if you don't want to be in close, socially distanced quarters with these people trying to change the world, that should probably be your first test around whether you want to start a company with these individuals. Speaking of starting a company, my wife reminded me this morning that July 1st will be the 5-year anniversary of me selling Achievers. And while she loves having me around the house now more than ever, she's like, hey, Razor, this might be a great time to start a company. So I've got 5 ideas. I got 5 ideas that I want to do a rapid fire with our VC panel. And I just want a quick invest or pass, okay? To make it a little extra interesting, I want our audience at home to also weigh in. We will share the results. You hear them live from our VCs, and then we'll go to our poll on whether or not you think you would invest in that, or you think it's a terrible idea and you would pass on that. Are we ready on our VC panel? We're going to go in alphabetical order, and we're going to go to you, to Byron, to Salim. Okay, here is idea number 1. My co-founder is a biotech genius. He has found the vaccine for COVID and has a way of mass producing it to billions of people by the end of the year. You in? And Byron.
I appreciate you starting with a softball. I'm all in, even though you probably need to open license it for the good of humanity.
We're all in. Invest.
Okay. Great. Now I just got to find that imaginary co-founder that has solved this. Okay. Next one. Okay. So yeah, it's an HR tech company. It's really focused on employee well-being, helping them mentally, physically, financially, at work, at home, in the office place, total cloud platform, next generation HR tech. What do you think?
Me again?
We're going to go alphabetical order. Invest. Byron.
In as well. I think it's a trend that'll outlast COVID.
And I'd be invest as well. Very, very interesting market.
Okay, look at this. Okay, it's getting a little tougher. Okay, hospitality, it's an interesting sector, right? Giant number of people are employed in it. We all benefit from it, but it's been decimated, right? Social distancing, it's going to be difficult for restaurants to come back online. And so we are going to create the ultimate cloud kitchen, the ultimate ghost kitchen. It's optimized for all of your favorite food ordering devices. You can come and pick up and go. Ghost kitchens, would you invest in that? Anne?
We conflict in investment, so we'd have to pass.
I'm as well. I think we'll see a lot of them, but I'm not sure they're venture-backed businesses.
Well, I'm going to buck the trend and say invest. I think we're seeing new consumer behaviors being born right now that might only continue to accelerate after the pandemic.
Agreed. Okay, this is a gimme. I've got the fastest growing global tech festival, 30,000 people all gathering together, small spaces. You in?
Out.
Out financially, but I'd love to go personally. I need human interaction.
Listen, I'm out because I already think Elevate exists, so I'm a big fan already.
I love it. Thank you guys very, very much. Okay, the next one is, you know what? It's a drone delivery pizza, 29 minutes are free. Cut out all the costs and people in the equation. Anne?
Out.
I'm in for a $20 pizza, but not to invest.
I'm a pass as well, largely because I think Byron has a drone behind him.
We've got several. I love all things drones. Give me the pizza.
Okay, let's go to our audience. What was the winning idea? COVID vaccine, right? Okay, it's gonna happen. Someone is gonna come up with treatments and vaccines. So we're all rooting for those biotech entrepreneurs looking to save the world. Okay, we are going to go to our live audience. We've got a number of really great questions. I'm going to start off with Elizabeth from Holt. She's asking a question to all panelists, wondering about evaluating companies and founders on video interviews. Are you looking at any emerging technologies in behavioral science that might be added to your vetting tech stacks? Okay, it was a long question, I apologize. So video interviews, is that the future? What are you thinking?
Well, I'll weigh in with two thoughts. One, from an investing standpoint, we're not looking at augmented tech. We're doing this the old-fashioned way, lots of conversations and on the business and personally, frankly, since it is a long-term partnership. However, for the bigger scale, in terms of employee hiring for companies, I think absolutely video interviews and analytics products and short form kind of answer the question, give feedback. Video sessions will become more and more the norm, and I think it's a great way to process a large volume of candidates, get a large number of people within the company to weigh in these little snackable bites, and to process candidates in a more balanced and efficient manner.
Got it.
And I would agree with Byron that I think we're coming into an environment where we have high levels of unemployment, and we're going to need to put lots of people back to work. I think technologies can really play a role in building efficient processes there.
Got it. Salim, next question is for you, actually, from Jenna over Twitter from Toronto. She wants to get your thoughts around how the startup community can launch businesses or iterate their business to help Main Street retailers. We've seen a huge decimation around Main Street. What can the startup community do to help?
Yeah, I mean, I think, a big a portion of Main Street is really retail businesses. And I think that we're seeing, lots of support for helping these traditional retail businesses transition to having some digital resiliency from, an e-commerce platform, digital order taking, digital queues to help customers do curbside pickups. I think that some of these are going to be larger platforms that build, basic infrastructure for these companies. But I think all of Main Street is going to be looking for solutions to help fill certain parts of their process that they need to build resiliency around. The City of Toronto has launched a really exciting program called Digital Main Street, and within that, a program called Shop Here, where they're working with groups like Google and Shopify to deploy platforms and to engage startups to work with Main Street businesses. So we really do hope that that type of model expands nationally and globally.
Yeah, we're super proud of what Chris Rickett and the team at City of Toronto are doing around Digital Main Street and launching 3,000 digital businesses to support Main Street. We'd love to take that across North America because we know that's such an important sector. Okay, I've got a question from Daniela on Zoom to Byron. What's the best way for founders to engage with board members during a crisis?
So I think some of the feedback up front on communication is the answer, meaning most of the time our board discussions are trying to focus on the strategic issues. You do the quick updates and dive into the strategic issues. So this is certainly front and center of one of those strategic talk tracks, but we're doing a lot of off-cycle, calls and texts and discussions around scenarios. Certainly no one knows what the next few months are going to hold. We've had companies that have done, a whole range of scenarios and already are throwing them out or tuning them massively because the market's responding differently than they anticipated. And so all I can say is be collaborative and try to get as much input as you can. One of the benefits of having board members right now is that they're likely broader but shallower than you. So pull in the breadth of what they're seeing from other companies and other experiences to roll that into your data set. And many of the firms out there, including us, are constantly doing calls and team discussions with our CFO forums and CEO forums for them to be able to share best practices and react, because these times are wildly dynamic, and data will be your friend as you're trying to think through what's ahead.
Yeah, I think the frequency is super critical, and just getting that wide, different perspectives, different data points is, again, this new world we're navigating in. I got a question over for Anne Erica from New York. She's an early stage entrepreneur, and she wants to know of any sort of best practices, tips or tricks around pitching VCs over Zoom, and anything you've seen creative that got your attention, anything people can do to stand out.
I found that the Zoom meeting is actually a really good forum to have a conversation, but sometimes what you have to realize is that on the VC side, we've been on these like back-to-back Zoom meetings for a long time, and that can actually become quite exhausting. And so a couple of things that I found really interesting. One, I actually had a Zoom call. And so the founder just said, hey, let's just talk through the business. If you want to just go on a walk, you could go on a walk. I'm not going to show you slides. I'm going to just talk you through what the business looks like. And so we arranged it so it was like a 30 or 40 minute walk and talk. And then at the end, we agreed to have sort of product demo. And so I was back at my desk after about 30 or 40 minutes. And then I watched the product demo so I could get a real good sense of it. But it was really nice because it was just a different way of interacting. The second thing that, although you're in New York, if you're sort of within driving distance, the other thing that our founders have actually been doing with follow-on investment partners is going on socially distanced walks. And I've really thought that was actually a really great way for our founders to get to know the partners that they're going to work with. And so those are some ideas of how you can actually interact with someone, really get to know them as a person, connect with them. That sits outside of this sort of let's just sit in front of a Zoom meeting and watch our presentation, which ultimately isn't great for connection.
Yeah, I love the idea of the walk and talk, right? Burn some calories, get some fresh air, and it just feels a little bit more casual and a little bit more of a human connection, relying on old school phone calls. Wow, look at that. We've come 360. Okay, so Terry wants to know from each of you your best estimate in terms of when the world goes back to normal, when the economy goes back. Let's call that single digits unemployment. Let's say, socially distance has been removed. We're sort of experiencing life the way we were back in 2019. We'll go in alphabetical order. We'll go Anne, Byron, and Salim.
Wow, fully normal, I think, is probably 18 months from now.
I'm hopeful for 12.
Okay.
And I think we'll hopefully be through the health crisis in 12 months, but I think from a business perspective, it'll probably be 2 to 3 years.
Got it. 2 years. So anywhere between 12 months, Byron the optimist, and kind of in the middle, and then 2 years before we're back to the good old days of 2019. I want to party like it's 2019 again, right? That was a great year, right?
Hallelujah.
Okay. Byron, we have a question from Leslie over to you. You released the 10 laws of cloud 11 years ago. Do those 10 principles, I know you guys update them, but does it still apply today? Are those early day predictions of cloud still relevant in the COVID world?
It's wild. We did a 10th anniversary update last year, which is on our website at bvp.com/cloud. And shockingly, most of it still does apply. I think that's the amazing thing. The fundamental change that's happening, this replatforming and this disruption, is still largely in the early days. And the insights that caused founders to jump out and start businesses, 10 or 15 years ago, absolutely still apply. We are still frustrated by a few of them. I'll say that we're still waiting for enterprise mobile to kick in. We're still waiting for some of the globalization to happen. We're still waiting for channels to reveal themselves that can be strong distribution sources for cloud products. Given that you don't have the services load that used to come with enterprise software, and you don't have the SIs making their money, they're much less inclined to push cloud products. It's a better answer for customers, and it's a better answer for the vendors. So those are the trade-offs we're accepting. But if you have interest, the updated laws are online, and certainly encourage feedback as people read through those and live through them daily.
Great, thank you. I'll definitely check out the next updated edition. We've got a question now from Fred for all of our panelists. It's I'm going to paraphrase. It's a little bit around social good. Earlier this year at Davos, sustainability was the theme. We saw this huge movement shifting from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. Talk to me about how important that is when you're making investment decisions. Is it all about bottom line stakeholder return, or do VCs care about sustainable social good businesses that only do well for shareholders, but they impact their communities, their customers, and their employees? We're going to go around. And Byron, Salim, is social conscious important?
So I actually believe that in order to attract really great talent these days, you actually have to have a purpose that you express to your constituents, which goes beyond we're here to make a great bottom line. And we're seeing this more and more with the talent in Silicon Valley, but to attract talent globally, especially when you look to Gen Z. Gen Z wants to work for a purpose, not work for a company. And so, I think like a company like even Intuit does this very, very well. They are talking about, selling accounting software and tax software, but how do they tell the story of what they do? They talk about how they power prosperity and how they help the SMB. And ultimately, it comes back to whether or not you actually do these things that allows you to then hold on to the talent. But in this talent war, I do believe that it's becoming more and more critical for both the end consumer, but also for your employees to be able to grow your business, to have that story.
So
Byron.
I would echo those sentiments. We invest other people's capital, so I need to note that there has to be a financial bottom line return, and I think that that's a qualifier for any business we invest in. However, the additional hurdle is something you're excited to work on and people you're excited to work with, and often that second objective can come directly in the company's mission. In my portfolio, a company like Guild Education, which is helping the reskilling of America's workforce, or Sila Nanotechnologies in the battery tech world, and a lot of companies like that, Phantom Auto for autonomous vehicle enablement. I think there's a lot of sort of social good in a lot of those markets, in addition to the job creation that comes with it. I would also note, though, consistent with Anne's point, a lot of our companies are choosing to do things like the Pledge 1% commitment. And we at Bessemer are big champions of this initiative, and the vast majority of my portfolio companies have done it, which is this idea of integrating corporate philanthropy with your core corporate mission. And that's a powerful statement for the employees and for your customer base, frankly, is to unite them around what your social cause is, and that as the company succeeds, so too does that the .org initiative and the social initiative. And if you look at a company like Shopify or like Twilio in our portfolio, you love the fact that their success leads to small business success, leads to job growth, and then often leads to a lot of positive social impact, even if the company at its heart isn't directly doing, a nonprofit type pursuit.
Great. Salim, your thoughts on social impact?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Anne and Byron said. And I would just add, for us being an AI fund, I think we spend a lot of time thinking about ethical AI and how these really breakthrough technologies are being used, whether for good or for other reasons. I think understanding data privacy, data security, what we found is that those topics are very important to entrepreneurs and are very important to their customers and our LPs, our investors. And so the ethical use of technologies in the right markets, I think, is a conversation we constantly have as we're looking at new deals.
Okay, let's keep Salim on for the last question. Salim, you've got great relationships with our government partners, city, provincially, and federally. What advice do you have to those people that are, issuing out big checks, writing big dollars to help stabilize and then stimulate the economy? What is your ask for the Canadian tech sector that you'd love to see our governments do?
Yeah, I think once we get through this health crisis, I think our focus needs to be about how do we rebuild and accelerate the Canadian economy. And, as a country, we've very traditionally been very focused on our traditional industries. And I think what we really need to position to all of our leaders is the role that the technology sector will have on reshaping industries, reshaping companies, reshaping our society, and also getting people back to work. And so how do we make sure that we are doubling down on our innovation ecosystem? How do we make sure that we're doubling down on developing talent, training, retraining programs to get people into these industries? And how do we make sure that Canada is well connected to other market leaders around the world so that we can collaborate on breakthrough ideas and breakthrough companies? This really has to be front and center for the government, and I think it needs to be a big part of Canada's future.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Anne, Byron, Salim. I'm going to go around the table one last time around closing comments. Anything you want to leave our audience with today? Anne, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, I think there's big changes afoot, right? So consumer spending has dramatically changed. It never does. And so there's new opportunities. And as scary as the world may look, and as scary as we're saying it's going to be, there's huge problems to be solved. And new categories to be created. So, for the founders who are out there who think they've spotted something, I would say no time like the present, and come talk to me before you talk to Salim and Byron.
Or at least together. Come on, Anne.
I'll be fine. I won't have
I would echo the sentiments. Certainly a particular shout out to the Canadian entrepreneurs watching. We've had a lot of success partnering in the region with prior portfolio companies like Shopify and Eloqua, and current portfolio companies like Vidyard. There's amazing innovation happening in Canada, and I think that would be my closing comment more broadly, which is that my primary focus is cloud and internet, which is increasingly driving the tech economy, but the tech economy is increasingly driving the global economy. And I do think that a huge critical component of this recovery is going to be tech-enabled job growth. And how do we collaborate and communicate as people when we're sheltering in place, and then when we're re-accelerating the global economy on the back end. And so, eager to partner with entrepreneurs that are doing that, and also huge appreciation for folks that are able to employ and hopefully in the future, scale up and hire more people, both for your business growth, but also for the economic health for all of us.
Thank you, Byron. Salim.
Yeah, I think even though we're in challenging times, I think we continue to be very optimistic about the companies that will be developed and scaled as a result of what we're seeing today. We believe that Canada has a big role to play in contributing some great entrepreneurs to the entrepreneurial world. And we are excited about how these entrepreneurs are going to use technology to solve meaningful problems in healthcare, education, financial services, housing, really, really important industries that can not only do well, but do good in the world. And we believe that, it's an exciting time to focus on that.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you to all three of you for spending time with us. I know you guys have no lack of demands on your time, and so we are so grateful for you to share your insights with our viewers today. As a small token of our appreciation, we have planted you a forest in your honor, the Miura-Ko Forest, the Byron Double Down Deeter, and the Super Salim Teja Forest is growing in your honor through our partnership with Trees Canada. Once we beat COVID, we do have a climate crisis to look after. Know that you're doing your part. Really grateful again to having you all on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you. And maybe we'll do a little walk and talk, old school phone call, and just catch up on some of those great ideas. Next week, again, we have the one, the only Arlene Dickinson joining us, former CBC Dragon's Den, incredible entrepreneur, investor, thought leader. She's going to be talking about reinvention next Wednesday, right here at noon Eastern on Elevate Live. My name is Razor Suleiman. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next week for episode 9. Take care.